Welcome back, everyone, to a very special episode of Under the Plate. Today, August 27th, marks 1 year since we first started Under the Plate on our YouTube channel, and today's a very special episode. Not only is it episode 35, but today marks our 11th and final character discussion for Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3. And of course, we couldn't end it off with anyone other than Cloud Strife himself.
I mean, he's the main character, and honestly, a whole year has led up to this moment, is my opinion. Because we've just gone so much in depth on a lot of Rebirth content, especially. And now that we're looking towards the future, the unknown future at that, we gotta deep dive into Cloud and kind of just see, we're gonna try to see where things are going. And I want to start off with just really saying the wonders that these remake games have been doing for Cloud's character. He's obviously a great character, iconic. People still remember him to this day for a reason from the original. But there's even like a quote from a Nojima that you showed me earlier that I think kind of sums up what these games have really done for our boy here.
Yeah, and specifically that quote was, Nojima said in a Famitsu issue, specifically 1224 in 2012, that he talked about how he was somewhat regretful on the fact that he wasn't able to draw more of Cloud's human appeal after his true identity is revealed. And I feel like that really is very emphasized in the remake trilogy so far, especially in Rebirth, where, we see this kind of goofy side to Cloud, we see that after the Lifestream sequence. We see him come out, we see Let's Mosey, right? But I feel like it's really been drawn out more in the remake trilogy, so I'm really excited to see where that leads in part 3.
And Cloud's always had a bit more of a reserved personality. We can even see a little bit of it when he's younger, but he also has a bit of fire in him. Making the promise to Tifa on the water tower when they were 14. So he has this other side to him that goes against his reserved, typical personality. But ever since all the stuff that happened in the backstory of the Nibelheim stuff, Cloud's not completely right in the head and has lost a sense of self. That's a big theme of Final Fantasy VII is identity. And Cloud was always the central character for that. But in the original, he has significantly less dialogue than he does now, even in the scenes that are almost one-to-one, because he just has a lot more going on. And it's funny, because in the original game, he does have... No, he's not a complete blank slate like Link or someone, but he kind of is just there sometimes, and he'll offer... this is what happened in the Nibelheim incident, when he is in Calm telling the party about Sephiroth. And we'll get, some memorable quotes, when you, first meet Yuffie and stuff, if you do the optional side content to get her. So there's still stuff there. He has some good quotes and good development, but Remake and Rebirth have blown that out of the water, and it's really entertaining to see a bit of that almost blank slateness, but it feels more like Cloud's getting drug into things. When they show up at the Gold Saucer and, all the girls are really into the dancing and stuff, but then when Dio rolls up and sees Cloud, Cloud really doesn't want any part of it. You can get that vibe entirely, which in the original, it just felt like he was just being kind of drug around like a pet on a leash sometimes. Because, there is impetus in the plot, but he didn't always seem invested. But now that seems more like a character trait, the way it's portrayed. Where he's just this again? Or, etc. But
Yeah.
Like you said, with his bit of goofy edge and him letting some of this persona slip a bit, after he, begrudgingly does get drug into that stuff at the Gold Saucer, at the end, he kind of gets a smirk, kind of fist pumps and revels in that moment.
Oh,
so he's
living it, dude. He when Dio lifts his hand and he's just smiling down, he's got the cheesiest smile on his face, and he's looking at Tifa and Aerith and Yuffie cheering him on. Like, the dude's living his life. He's happy.
And we even got a taste of that in like the Honeybee Inn in part 1.
Yep.
So it feels like they've contextualized like a limitation or like just a perspective of the original game and like really fleshed it out. Because we see that Cloud is this deeply multifaceted person who is, of course, struggling with some of the mental stuff because of things like the S cells and Mako and all this other stuff. But we really do get a much better glimpse at him.
I agree. I really agree. And I think that, again, you really basically said exactly what I wanted to say, so I'm not going to repeat it, but I just think that there's so many instances in Rebirth where he's brought into an uncomfortable situation, but that kind of just forces his true character to come out. And like, you know, whenever I think about the Costa del Amor game, right? Costa del Amor, you see him do all these crazy challenges and stuff to get swimsuits. And then, of course, you know, he's down there and he's all blushing and freaking out when he sees when he sees Tifa and Aerith down there getting with the swimsuit. And I think that's just, again, it's a humorous moment that's just meant to emphasize that Cloud is a human being. He's not this super soldier with no personality that's just about getting the job done like he acts like at the very beginning of Remake. You know, and that's part of it too that I think that we'll see explored in part 3 is the fact that like Cloud has been asleep for years, right? Like there's years of his life he just did not live. And so his kind of perception of time is different than the others, right? Like when he just shows up and he's like, "Oh yeah, Tifa, here's a flower for you." And he's sitting there and like, "I just need my payment. I need my gil." And now that's the same guy that is now, you know, at the end of Rebirth, we see like his inner emotions of what, you know, he wanted to do, cry and break down about Aerith, right? Like, I think it's a very inspiring journey, I think, for people that might struggle to find ways to be themselves in groups and stuff. But I think more importantly for Cloud, it's just this really great journey that is only going to continue, and it's going to hit the climax of his character arc in part 3. So again, I'm just really excited to see how that all plays out, because I think everything we've gotten so far has been tremendously great.
And like, you know, like I said, one of the big themes of FF7 is identity. Like Aerith accepts her like role as an ancient, and part of the reason Sephiroth, you know, has his fall from grace is he views one part of his identity but doesn't do anything else with it, and that's kind of what ends up driving him mad. Because he might be, you know, a test tube baby and be made from an alien and have been made almost essentially to be a propaganda piece, but he doesn't do what Cloud does. Because a big part of Cloud's arc, and I'd honestly say just the way they've represented it in the remake game so far, just enhances like that original game's vision. Because a lot of the stuff with Cloud is, by the end of the game, well, even before that, really, you know, Cloud failed to become a soldier. He was just a basic infantryman because he didn't make the cut. But it really just seems like a lot of that was probably because he never truly believed in himself. He probably never gave himself any room to be who he is supposed to be. And because, you know, he grew up, and we even come to find out that like him and Tifa weren't like even particularly close as kids. He really had no one. The only person in the world he had that truly supported his dreams and loved him at that point was his mother, which
definitely not his dad,
lost.
who's Glenn. No, dude, no, I gotta interrupt. I just gotta say it. Will we see Cloud's dad in part 3? Put it out there, yes or no.
I don't think we will. I think it'd be funny or possibly even interesting, but I'm gonna lean towards no.
Okay, if we do, is it Glenn?
I'd have to look up his like specific age and like I'm not certain. Does Glenn even have like an age pegged down? We just know that
Uh,
he's.
I don't know.
We just know that like Sephiroth is like what 30 and Cloud's like 21,
Yeah, I think so.
and we know Glenn's older, so Sephiroth has about 10 years. So if Glenn had at least 8 to 10 years on Sephiroth, it would be possible because in Ever Crisis, like in some of the like sub story stuff, we see them trying to have a little party with Sephiroth and like him, Matt, like they have like beers and Sephiroth has
Yeah.
like I think like a soda cup or something. So they're drinking, so they're clearly older than 21. So that Glenn's at least 5 years older than Sephiroth at
No,
minimum.
100%. And I will say, speaking on parents, because I'm just thinking about this, I do think I'm not sure. I don't think they're gonna show Cloud's dad. Personally, I'd love to be wrong, but I don't think they will. But I do think that Thea, Tifa's mom, will be in part three somewhere. I feel because like there was a lot of build up for that in Traces of Two Past. So I feel like that would be really interesting to see, especially like maybe during the live stream sequence of like, seeing Clouds, them as kids and stuff, because we did see that already with Tifa, but I do feel like we will see it again in new form in a live stream. So I don't know, just random tangent, but I just was like thinking, I'm like, yeah, Cloud's dad, but I do think we'll see Thea.
Yeah, I honestly think that could be something because like they've been doing so well at least integrating the books on some sort of level, even if it's just like a side quest character or some of the stuff with Leslie. But this book's newer, so I think it would be pretty interesting for them to incorporate a newer
Yeah,
piece of content like that,
I do too.
especially since it seems like pretty directly tied into the remake games.
For sure. And I mean, we've already seen a lot of stuff from Trace of Two Pasts incorporated, especially in Rebirth. So again, it'll be interesting to see. But I will say, like, if people want to throw out like parent theories, I definitely lean that Thea will be in part three somewhere. Cloud's dad, I don't know.
Before we go off on other tangents, because then I was gonna be like, let's see like Barrett's parents, and we just have like an old Gramps and Grandma who act just like Barrett. That'd be wild.
But anyways,
But
back on track. I'm sorry for
yeah,
interrupting
yeah,
you.
no, great content, and that's what we're here for. But anyway, much like it, pretty much it is just like Cloud's arc is really just him coming into his own and kind of accepting himself for who he is. And we might bring this up later, but some of that could probably end up being why he ends up the way he is in Advent Children also, beyond just like some grief, guilt, and other things.
Yeah.
But so talking a little bit more about specifically Cloud in part 3, we touched on this a bit like when we were talking a bit about Wu Tai and in Yuffie's video. But I think one of the more interesting things at the start of the game will be seeing one, Cloud's like state of mind and perspective on everything, because the ending of Rebirth clearly shows that Cloud is not on the same page as the party, because he quite literally does not know the full story of what's going on.
No, that man is not right in the head.
So I think like we talked about like these dynamics that could be mixed up at the start of the game, but I think diving a bit deeper into what this could be would be quite interesting.
No, I definitely agree and absolutely would love to dive in. Like one of the big things for me, and I'm actually going to go back before specifically talking about Cloud. I want to talk about Cloud, but in the perspective of the party. Because, we mentioned a couple of videos ago talking about, hey, Cloud is going to have a really kind of interesting state of mind, and the party is going to be, like, concerned about that. I don't remember the commenter's name, I'm sorry, but someone had a really great comment that I kind of want to bring up just to talk about because I think it's interesting. Is the comment basically, the gist of it was that the party saw Cloud bury Aerith, and so do they even think that he's, there's something not right with him? Because yes, we see him say, oh, look up, right? It's right there, like at the end of the game. but we don't necessarily see the party like really look at him super weirdly, other than maybe Barrett a little bit, but definitely Tifa. But Tifa has plenty of reasons for that. So it's going to be really interesting. So I'm curious, Payne, like, what do you kind of think the party's thinking about Cloud right now with that context in mind?
So we got a little bit of a taste of this type of, like, inner conflict in a way in Rebirth when, we play through the Nibelheim stuff, Cloud's telling the story, but then, as we progress through the game, like, Tifa kind of pulls, like, Aerith aside and, like, is like, some of this just seems weird. Is Cloud remembering things correctly? Am I remembering things correctly? Because, like, Tifa knows that as well. She knows, quote unquote, that he wasn't there. He just wasn't there in the role that he was describing himself in.
Right.
So we already have a bit of this, at least, especially stirring in Tifa, like you mentioned. Like, she kind of knows Cloud on a deeper level than everyone else. So I do think she will be like the main part of this, conflict going on amongst inner conflict, because the thing that makes this kind of work in the story is that they have to have this forward momentum. They have to keep going because they have a mission. They have to stop Sephiroth, and now we're at the point where it's like, at the start of the game, Meteor won't be falling quite yet, but that's where it's gonna lead to. So right now they just have in mind, like, we gotta stop Sephiroth, we gotta avenge Aerith, so they don't really have too much downtime to really talk and get everything figured out, and that's kind of what will end up causing this. I don't think it'll be like a huge rift, but we will definitely see these characters question Cloud.
I think so too. And I think, again, like, it's just really interesting because Tifa in particular, like you said, is the key to all of this, because she knows Cloud better than anyone else, yet at the same time she feels like she doesn't know him at all. And I think, again, that's the conflict for me that I'm so invested in and really seeing unfold. And so I'm really excited about that. But, moving to Cloud, it's going to be really interesting because, again, like, you think about the aspect of the black materia and how he acted at the temple, right? And then you think about North Crater and how he acts there in the original game. It's going to get really interesting when he starts to just turn berserker mode and runs with the black materia, or, as, oh, I must give this to Sephiroth. Because we saw it at the end of Rebirth even, right? He's at the reunion, and somehow the materia merges with the Buster Sword, which we'll, of course, talk about in a little bit. But it's just a very interesting thing of, like, he's going to have this eating away at him slowly. And for me, I feel like it's only a matter of time before the seal fully breaks, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like we're going to see behaviors of his that are kind of, like we saw at the temple, kind of slowly seep through. And I think Tifa, out of everyone, is going to notice because, again, like, she's the one that noticed the changes in Cloud. She's the one questioning things. I think she's going to notice things and question him about it, and slowly more and more of the party will. But I think, again, that just leads to the North Crater where he has his full breakdown.
And this is like an interesting dichotomy here, because we were just talking about how we see this more human side of Cloud grow throughout Remake and especially Rebirth. Like, we see him actually awkwardly high-five Aerith in Remake, and then he's, doing it unironically to people in side quests in Rebirth. And so he's really, gaining this sense of self. So I wonder if we'll actually just kind of see that slowly drain away until it comes to a head at the Northern Crater.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's totally fair. And I also will say, just thinking on it, I think another character that's really going to point it out, Barrett, maybe. I mean, I definitely can see Barrett. We saw plenty of that throughout the first two games. But I actually think that Yuffie is going to be another character that really, like, points out that Cloud's just acting weird. Because she and Cloud have a very interesting relationship that's very funny to watch. And I think about especially, like, their Golden Saucer scene where, they're, like, play fighting and stuff, just the kind of interactions that they have. I feel
It's
like
like
she'll
a
she'll
it's like a
definitely be
brother
one.
and sister in some ways.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like she'll definitely be one to kind of notice and be like, whoa, like, why is Cloud doing this? Or what's wrong with Cloud? Because again, this is the most interesting thing for me about anything regarding the start of part 3 is this idea that we're starting out the game with the party having lost Aerith, and there's kind of there is a natural transition into like grieving and stuff, but at the same time, like the mission doesn't stop, and it didn't stop in the original. But it's just really interesting now with the voice acting and everything else about how the party has to press on, but they can't forget about what just happened at the Forgotten Capital. So seeing how the developers depict that through cutscenes and facial animations and just voice acting, I'm really excited to see, because I just think that that's such an interesting dynamic of the party having to push on for Sephiroth despite the fact that they're crying from the loss of one of their own.
But it, I think it really will be, because Rebirth also introduced all these interesting mechanics to really make this feel like a party. Like, out of most action RPGs I've played, like having the synergy attacks, the party level, the like relationships with like the meter of like how close you are to your party members and the side quests being connected to them, that game really built up the camaraderie and you feel like a team. And I think that's almost like a contextual way to have a reset on all that, because like Cloud is like the connecting piece to everyone in many ways. But like, man, like how can you really fully work together at your full potential with someone who's going through all this and who's might not even fully be there?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's one of those things that is just so interesting to watch unfold, because yes, like we saw this in the original game, but just seeing it brought to life and reimagined really gives new depth to these moments and these connections between party members and these just events and scenarios. So I think overall, understanding how that is depicted and leads to that North Crater scene is going to be really important. And part of that, of course, with Cloud, breaking down is with degradation, so, with soldiers. And he actually mentions this at the Gingaga scene in chapter 9, where after Tifa is recovered from the weapon and he's in the room with her, and he tells her that he feels like he might be going through the cellular degradation that soldiers go through. And so that's just a really interesting plot point that was inserted there that was really relevant in Crisis Core, but not so much in the original game. And I'm really curious to kind of see if that's something that the team is going to continue to expand. And again, with Tifa in particular, she already knows that there's stuff that is not right with Cloud, but after that scene, she tells him like it's her turn to help him, right, with the cellular degradation. And so I feel like for her, like her one link to everything, the one person that she has left, basically Cloud, kind of seeing him degrade is going to be something that really eats away at her. And I do think that like she's going to have to find comfort in someone. And we did a whole episode about this. I'm not trying to make another episode, but I do think that it's going to be interesting to kind of see how she reacts to that degradation, because I do think that that concept is going to be explored a lot more in this game.
And especially, I'm almost wondering, because like especially at the end of Rebirth, we see him stick the black materia into the Buster Sword and talk about the reunion. That's some very Black Cloak acting, That's all they really talk about, just and talk about the reunion. And I honestly think one of the characters could end up drawing that exact same comparison at some point before things come to a head. And I'm also wondering if possibly they could bring Roche back into the mix to explore some of this.
He's coming back. I mean, we saw him strapped up in that helicopter. He is coming back. It's just a matter of how. Because I think there's multiple instances. Like, I was thinking about this. I feel like we could see him in the North Crater, considering Hojo's there, right? But I also do think that it would really make a lot of sense for him. Well, to be fair, yeah, I was going to say, I feel like it would make a lot of sense for him to also be on the raid at Midgar and kind of be at the tower. And he's a boss you have to fight before you get to Hojo. But I do think it would be really interesting if he shows up at the Northern Crater, because then that gives the development team a chance to be like, hey, Tifa, this is what happens to degraded soldiers. And just her mind is going to be going like, oh my gosh. And then Cloud's going to see that. That's going to further his just crazy mental state at this point. And the whole party, it's just going to be a huge shell shock moment if you see that that's what Roche became. But again, there's multiple areas they could use him in. I do think it would be interesting to see him show up in the crater, though.
I'm also just sitting here thinking, I wonder if there's going to be like certain like key moments, like as we're getting to the North Crater, that just kind of slowly tank Cloud's mental state even more. Like, obviously, like, I'm pretty sure if they keep pushing like some of this degradation stuff, like who wouldn't that send over the edge, really?
No, I know, like, and that's then, anyone.
And you know, the straw that breaks the camel's back is in the North Crater when Sephiroth's trying to get the black materia from them. He, you know, shows the actual Nibelheim scenes, but Cloud's kind of removed, and Cloud doesn't even know he's there because Sephiroth's trying to make him believe all he is a puppet, and his only purpose is to like give him the materia. Like, he shows Zack there, and he's like, here's actually what happened. You were never there. You weren't the hero who stopped me there and saved Tifa and all this other stuff. It was Zack.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree. And I mean, I guess, you know, fully moving into this kind of Northern Crater breakdown, it's just going to be really fascinating to see how the development team is going to jump into like revealing certain truths to Cloud, right? Because what is really ultimately going to contribute to his full breakdown to where he just gives Sephiroth the materia? And I think for me, that has to be the fact that Aerith is actually dead. And I think depending on how Sephiroth toys with it, you could even argue that, like, yes, he could just say, Aerith is dead, you didn't save her. But I feel like to hurt him even more, I feel like Sephiroth will say, Aerith is dead and you're the one who killed her.
Oof. Because, like, it's a thing in both the original and Rebirth that Cloud did try to strike her down. He did feel something come over him, and he lost his sense of self.
Exactly. And so I feel like, how interesting would that be if Sephiroth is like, you killed Aerith, and the whole party doesn't know what to believe because they just saw Cloud holding Aerith. They didn't actually see him. They didn't see Sephiroth stab her. They just saw Sephiroth standing behind her in Cloud. So I'm really curious, because again, it could go either way. It could just be, hey, this is, you know, you didn't save Aerith. You were too late. You just stood there and did nothing, which I think would hit, obviously, really hard. And that's an opportunity to show the original scene. But Sephiroth could also just twist that knife a little bit more and say, you killed Aerith and let me watch, basically. But you, like, your cellular degradation and connection to me took over, and you killed her and struck her down. And I feel like that would like break Cloud beyond return from a viewer's perspective and send him into the spiral and, you know, lead ultimately to the Lifestream sequence.
Because I really think that will be the ultimate, like, straw that breaks the camel's back. Because some of the stuff with, like, him just, like, showing that partial truth of the Nibelheim flashback would just be like, yeah, you killed Aerith, but also you didn't save anyone or do anything of note. So that's just, like, squirting the lemon juice in the eyes. It's just kicking him when he's already down, and he's already going to be broken by the Aerith stuff once that truth is revealed. And it also just makes me think, if the party didn't fully, truly see or understand what was going on and could believe this, could we possibly get, like, some, like, a bit of backlash from them just, like, as a knee-jerk? Or are they just going to always have their boys back?
No, and that's what I'm thinking here is, like, it's not just that revelation from Sephiroth, it's the whole party being like, Cloud, come on. Like, he's lying, or like, they don't know what to believe because they know that Cloud's been acting super weird. The whole like last 30 hours of game, right? Like, he's been acting super weird, and they just saw him holding her, and I just think that would be very, very interesting. And it's like, not only is Sephiroth telling you that, but the whole party now doesn't know what to believe. You think about he looks at Tifa. Tifa's just as, what is going on? And I feel like that would just really create such an interesting dynamic, because not only does that send Cloud into a spiral, but that also sends the party into a spiral. And you think about like Judgment Day and stuff, where Tifa and Barret are prisoner on, to be executed for the crimes of summoning Meteor. Like, Tifa and Barret are probably just completely drained of any hope. And they are in the original game, but think about more so with that, because it's like, wow, like Cloud's gone, and not only is Cloud gone, but he killed Aerith, and Aerith was supposed to help us stop Sephiroth, and we're done. And like, they don't know the truth. You see what I mean? Like, I feel like this concept of, we've talked about it before, but like, Final Fantasy VII loves to lie. It really loves to lie to the player and kind of mix truths, and we've seen that so much elevated in especially Rebirth with Aerith's scene. And I just feel like that the development team is not going to want to hand out their card quickly. I feel like that by keeping suspense and leaving the party members unsure of what to believe, just as we are, would be a really interesting way of telling the story.
I'm also sitting here wondering, like, when they get to the Northern Crater, like, the whole party's gonna see that, oh, wait, Sephiroth's, like, dead. Who have we been, like, seeing?
Yup. And I feel that that's going to be something that's really, really pushed too, because again, like, Jenova obviously had a very key role in Disc 2 and 3, but I feel like even more so this time around, especially after like the whole Temple of the Ancients lore with the whole kind of hologram, they're not holograms, but you know what I mean, like the projections of the Cetra versus Jenova. I feel that, again, like, part 3 is going to be about closing out the 2,000-year war against Jenova for good. So kind of expanding on that would be interesting. And with that, I think part of that is obviously, the concept of Tifa not being real. This is something that Sephiroth kind of planted in Cloud's head throughout the game. So not only is Tifa questioning Cloud, he's questioning her. And especially in the original, Tifa actually kind of tells the party, I think it's Red 13 specifically, to go one way, and her character model flashes, and it's actually Sephiroth and Jenova.
So, I feel like, especially with that, I wonder if that could also make the party start questioning if Cloud's real. Because, like, oh, Sephiroth's dead.
Ooh.
We're kind of putting these pieces together, that Jenova takes on other forms, and we've been seeing the black robes. So I'm wondering if they could just literally just I can almost in my head like picture like Barret just kind of having enough at the North Crater, and maybe outright being like, oh, is Cloud just a Sephiroth clone? Is he part of Jenova? And like maybe even almost like verbally attacking him for a second. I wonder if that could be a thing, because I feel like Barret, out of everyone in the party, is the most likely to call someone out on their like BS, or
yeah,
his perceived notion of that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Because I could just see like, because ultimately what drove Sephiroth to doing all this is that he had nobody, and then when he learns like pretty much only a part of the truth, that's what led him down his path. Because Sephiroth did have friends at one point. He did have other things he wanted to do, but he sacrificed his sense of self to Jenova, basically. And he's trying to do the exact same thing to Cloud.
And it's interesting because, like, in a way, you could argue that, like, Sephiroth kind of sees parts of himself in Cloud, right?
Oh, yeah. But I think that's ultimately... because we touched on that in the Sephiroth episode. Like, Sephiroth and Cloud as a protagonist and an antagonist are only a hop, skip, and a step away from being each other. Because they have a lot of similar upbringing stuff. Except Cloud's revolved around him dreaming to be Sephiroth, of all things, pretty much.
Right. Seeing Sephiroth as this hero who he wants to be the best of the best, as he says to Tifa on the water tower.
And I think that we'll talk about the 7 seconds till the end scene, which I think that's where like Cloud and Sephiroth's kind of weird pseudo relationship will really blossom into what it's supposed to be and tie into like the game's theming. But here, like, this would also tie it a bit into like some of the legacy stuff that we see all throughout the compilation. But so all the black robes are clearly, under Sephiroth's influence, but they don't retain the same prowess as someone like Cloud has, as like so far. Like they're significantly much less useful than Cloud.
Right.
And I think some of this is because Sephiroth does have this kinship with him. He kind of sees himself in this, young man. And really just it is Jenova that is kind of doing a lot of this, but this is where we start interacting with the real Sephiroth. So I can get him like kind of focusing more solely on Cloud, and the legacy stuff. I'm sorry, I'm kind of formulating this thought on the fly because we just kind of back and forth and come up with new ideas. Like, we discuss stuff beforehand on all of this, write some stuff down, but then 90% of these episodes end up becoming stuff we just come up with on the spot. But because, Sephiroth can't live forever, and I don't think Jenova can keep up these forms for forever, especially since they can be killed. So what's a better way to ensure that your plan comes to fruition and all this continues than having someone who is just as capable and is as much of a carbon copy as you? And the only way he can do that is to, take everything Cloud has, which at this moment is his friends, because these are really the only reasons he has left to live.
Man,
and
that's cruel. But it's true, I get it.
If they all turn on him and everything, and then like, oh, your life's a lie, he's gonna lose a sense of self, he's gonna lose a sense of community, and that's really... Because if something did happen to Sephiroth, what's a better failsafe than having someone just as strong, but also having people that could never properly fight against him?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's going to be really interesting, especially with the black robes, because again, we already saw that kind of Jenova flash of Cloud actually having a black robe and saying the reunion and walking, right? Like this has been something that has been showcased before, so I'm really curious to see like how that plays out, because again, that's a thought in his mind right now.
And even before all this, because during the black materia stuff at the end of Rebirth, there's some like, what are you doing, guy? I wonder if there could be a possible attempt at like a confrontation with Cloud by one of or a couple of the party members before we hit the northern crater.
Yeah, like maybe like Icicle Inn or something.
Or what if it's just like a couple of different party members talking about it, but somehow maybe Sephiroth or someone else becomes privy to this, and they're like, and it just adds like more fuel to the fire of, hey Cloud, your friends are literally talking behind your back. They don't trust you.
Right. Yeah.
There's just a lot that can be done here, truly.
There really is, and again, I think there's so many different ways they can go about it. And in terms of like a confrontation, we kind of already talked about it a little bit, but I do think that we will somehow see like a Cloud boss fight potentially in the North Crater. Just because, again, that's something that they can really do to emphasize you were not the person we thought you were. Like, what's going on? And really just I think set the tone with that the party is doesn't know what's going on. They don't understand, but Cloud is just out of his mind, and they're the only people that can stop him.
So I think we're probably about done with specifically the Northern Crater thing, but the last thing I want to bring up about it is Zack and Worlds. Because part of the original, as we've been saying, has been him showing like a partial truth of the real Nibelheim incident. So I wonder if, because, the world stuff at the end of Rebirth, we do get like a co op fight where Zack and Cloud take on this form of Sephiroth. But in that moment, a thing happens and Zack's name more or less comes to Cloud when that should be like really hyper repressed. So I wonder if is Cloud gonna remember, actually remember Zack and possibly have something to say or do in this moment? Or could we possibly see some other world stuff, which we kind of touched upon that a little in the Sephiroth episode? But I'm just wondering if any of that stuff will come into play, or if it will be played a little more straight but enhanced.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought, right? Because worlds are a very key aspect of this game, and with Cloud in particular right now, we have the giant rift in the sky. He is clearly seeing things that are, as he says in the original game, to quote him, as he is the master of his own illusionary dream world, right? And I think that that's something that the developers really want to emphasize. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is kind of some world stuff going on here in this sequence and even leading up to it.
I'm also wondering if in this moment, if some of the other party members could be a bit more involved in some of this world stuff. I wonder if there's gonna, maybe not even at this part of the game, but I wonder if there could be a segment where all the characters might have to self-actualize what they want or need and could possibly put into a world almost similar to some of the stuff at the end of Rebirth with Cloud going on these dates with Aerith and such. So I wonder if we could see oh, what if Cloud is put in a world where this is where Tifa is fake? What if Tifa's thrown into a world where some other crazy stuff's going on with Cloud, etc.? I think there's just a lot open to that. I don't think they have to go quite that intense with the worlds, because I feel them using it a bit more sparingly kind of drives home certain scenes or, themes. But I think this could be a good part to at least have something like that there, even if it kind of just stops at maybe just Zack.
Yeah. And I will say, I do think that awakening, when Sephiroth gets the materia, I think we could easily see him potentially comment on this idea of worlds, summoning the meteor and all that, because he says the reunion of worlds, and I do think this is kind of where negative Lifestream in particular might come in, just because that is a very key concept that really explains a lot of what's happening, and I do think that in particular will be name dropped, just again because it is important and it is canon to the compilation.
And also, speaking of worlds, so after all this, Cloud ends up going comatose and winding up in a deal with Tifa taking care of him after a bunch of other stuff goes down. But I wonder if we could, I was thinking, so we get these Zack intermissions in Rebirth. What if there's just a one chapter intermission where it's Cloud in some type of world while he's in this comatose state?
That's a really, really cool idea. What are you thinking in particular that he's going to be seeing in that world?
I'm not even quite sure. I wonder if it could just be build up for, the stuff with him and Tifa in the Lifestream, which we've already kind of said this before, but that's a world, guys. That's literally a world in the original game. That's what it is.
It's Cloud's world. Yeah.
So I wonder if it could just be like, okay, so we clearly see when Tifa does go into all that stuff, Cloud, we see these like after images of Cloud just having breakdowns and having all this. So I wonder if it could just literally be me saying literally. Don't you love when you have hours of recorded content, you start seeing your weird vocal patterns? However, I think it could just be him experiencing his own descent into this dark place from like an out of body way. I wonder if he could just actually be seeing possible scenes from his life or other things being twisted, and him just maybe being like, oh, maybe I am all these things Sephiroth says and all that, just like as a build up to that scene.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's definitely fair. And again, this is a concept that the developers are definitely going to at least dive into a little bit before the end of the game. And this is a scene that it makes sense. And with Cloud having potentially his own world that he explores, and this intermission, which I'll be honest, like, I don't know how likely that is, but I think that would be so cool as to kind of break up the, the party flying around. It would be really cool to kind of see Cloud in this state. And again, I definitely think that Zack could be a part of that. I do. And we haven't actually yet seen Angeal. I don't know, because Cloud didn't know Angeal. Cloud doesn't have a relationship with Angeal. But I kind of wonder when we talk about legacy, if that's going to be something that might be explored, where like maybe he has an interaction in that world. Because we actually see him interact with Zack in a white space in Advent Children. So I don't think it's out of the question that I'm completely ignoring the fact that he interacted with Zack in Rebirth, but I would think it would be very interesting to kind of see him interact with Zack's spirit in a world, when he's comatose.
Like, man, really? I wonder if it could just be Cloud actually trying to cope with some of his own problems.
Right.
Sephiroth, this is when he reveals, Cloud's not who he thinks he is. And that is part of the descent. But if we possibly do get a glimpse into like Cloud's mind before Tifa goes in to fix it, we could probably actually see him possibly interact with Zack again. But I really did like how you kind of said, what if Cloud interacted with like specifically Angeal, like he's just wandering through these worlds, because we see like these characters who are like tangentially related bump into each other, because Zack never really knew like Jesse or Biggs or even Aerith's mom too much, but we see all that happening in these intermissions. So I think it would kind of make sense, especially with Legacy, for him to maybe bump into Angeal, and that kind of might end up making him remember more about Zack. Because he sees, a bit of Angeal in Zack.
Yeah, maybe. It would be kind of cool to kind of see Angeal give Cloud a push to make him realize that, hey.
No, Angeal gives Cloud the Buster Sword.
Yeah, I don't know. I was talking to a friend about this the other day. I think it's really interesting that we have not seen Angeal. Like we didn't see him at all in Crisis Core. And I just personally find it hard to believe that we won't see him in part 3 at some point. And I'm not expecting it to be this whole huge thing, but I do think that like he will show up at some point for just a small little scene. And so I don't know, if Cloud gets a intermission chapter, that would be really interesting. But I want to jump forward a little bit to the lead up from his comatose state, which is really the Lifestream sequence. And just being transparent, we did an entire episode on Tifa and spent probably 25 minutes talking about the Lifestream sequence. So definitely feel free to check that out if you want more. But we're still going to talk about it a little bit, albeit a more kind of surface level discussion of it. But this is really the moment. This is the climax of the story for character progression, where Cloud finds out who he is and is able to transcend past the figurative shackles on him at this point in the game.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, you know, I kind of tossed that idea out there of having some lead up to it, but really, this scene doesn't need it. I honestly think it can stand on its own two legs perfectly fine.
Agreed.
Just because of the content within it. Because that really does give us this deeper look at Cloud's perspective and help us, like, clear it up. Like, we're also helping Cloud kind of accept himself through Tifa.
Yeah, that's so important for everything that comes after. Again, I don't think that with everything that was built up through the first two games and the stuff that will happen before Cloud goes comatose, that there really isn't anything that like must happen for this scene to hit as it should.
Definitely not, because it's just that much of like a banger of a scene. That it's a bomb. It just drops, boom, and that's really what causes the rest of the game to happen the way it does. This is, as we've said, probably the most important moment in the game. It's not quite the climax, but it's definitely like the rising action, because stuff goes down after this moment. This is when Cloud kind of starts accepting himself. And it's also when he kind of is a little more vulnerable to the whole party. Because when they get back on the High Wind and reunite with everyone, it is him kind of almost shamefully telling the full truth. And, ooh, that scene can be so well executed here, especially with voice acting and animation and just the expanded script. Because we could probably get a lot more from each character about, like, their thoughts on Cloud. Like, maybe someone might need a bit of breathing room to kind of accept everything that's gone on. Maybe some people are like, oh, this makes just perfect sense, and like really offer Cloud some true empathy. There's just and that's just ignoring the Lifestream sequence itself. That's the aftermath where everyone knows the truth now and they're trying to figure out how to, you know, save the planet at this point.
Right. Yeah, that scene that we're talking about in particular is the one where he's in the meeting room of the High Wind and explains to everyone and apologizes to them. And again, I totally agree. I think that scene in the remake is going to be absolutely unbelievable. But again, I know you're probably going to say turning back to the live stream, so feel free to take it away.
Yeah, there's like, I think there's a slight but. I don't know if we'll even edit that out. But, yeah, the sequence itself, where, you know, it's going to be Tifa focused. In a sense, I'd honestly bet money that we're actually controlling Tifa through this in like some very interesting ways. I wonder if there could be some combat stuff. Tifa has to fight off Sephiroth apparitions or whispers to protect Cloud's mind. I mean,
ooh, interesting.
Like, who knows? I think something like that could be put in there, but as we said like a few minutes ago, like this whole scene could be pretty much just played straight and be like so huge just because of like the style of like the scripting and everything else.
Yeah.
But gosh, I'm kind of thinking of where to go from next, because these viewers need a reason to check out some future stuff and check out that Tifa video if they haven't.
No, that's totally fair, and absolutely go and check out that Tifa discussion a few episodes back for more on the live stream. But I want to kind of jump to a very important part that wasn't really addressed in Rebirth, because it shouldn't be, but it's the 7 seconds till the end comment from the end of Remake. And, you know, I think it's pretty clearly referencing the final fight at the Edge of Creation at the very end of Final Fantasy VII. So I'm really excited to kind of see how that plays out, because I think that sequence is going to be a lot more potentially high stakes than it was in the original game.
So we've also been we talked a bit about the Edge of Creation in the Sephiroth episode we did, and also Ever Crisis stuff, because it shows up. So right now I'm kind of wondering if Could this be Sephiroth's world?
Ooh, that's an interesting thought. Yeah. Um, I do think that the edge of creation is its own thing,
I'm
but I
leaning more
will
towards that.
but I
Maybe
will
the
say it'll be interesting
Genesis
to see
Vault.
if Sephiroth does have a world, because that could actually potentially be something we explore in the final fight, maybe.
True. But the Edge of Creation, well, judging by the name, I'd say that could be like where all worlds start, maybe.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Or
Because
even the end of all worlds.
yeah, well, I mean, they do say that it's like the the end of the universe, basically, right, or the end of the world in a way. And I think that it's something that can be used very interestingly with that 7 seconds, time enough for you, but what will you do with it? Where, maybe Cloud really does have like 7 seconds to defeat Sephiroth and save the world or something. And, that's going to be with Omni Slash, obviously.
Oh, ooh.
So,
But okay, so you bringing up that detail of it being like the end of like the universe in a sense, they could totally just have like this like strong thematic presence of maybe this is where Sephiroth's journey on all this ended. This is where his mind wound up. But Square also makes like the world ends with you games. I feel like they could have a bit of a theme like that where like things might have ended here for the hero who was supposed to be all of this and save the world, quote unquote, in a sense. But that doesn't have to be where Cloud stops. He can continue things and probably make a completely different difference or a whole new world.
right.
But also just the Omni Slash dude. So surely you'll have to be able to unlock it beforehand, like in the original game, right? But I think even if that is the case and you can be popping off Omni Slash before you even have this like final fight with Sephiroth, I think I'm willing to bet that it's gonna have like something special to it when it happens in this scene specifically.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting because you mentioned the specifically Sephiroth's world. I'm thinking about it more and more in context of the original game, and I do think that, like, again, this is something that is in Cloud's mind, right? Because whenever you go in the original game, it's not like Cloud like goes to this whole place. It happens in his mind. So it's somewhere there that leads to it. So it is perchance. I understand kind of it's similar into Worlds in a way, but it's definitely linked to Cloud's mind in the sense of, right, like you can even connect the end of the world, perchance you could connect that to the thought of Omega Weapon, right? In the sense of, okay, if the planet dies, Omega Weapon is going to come up and take the Lifestream with it, right? We see that in Dirge of Cerberus. So there's a lot of stuff in the compilation that can really tie back to that. And again, it's just going to be really interesting to see what the developers do. We actually, I'm thinking about it, we actually haven't had a episode on the Edge of Creation yet, so I'm going to move that up in priority so we can actually kind of put something out, because I feel like we have a lot of interesting things to say on that.
So if Cloud has 7 seconds to the end to basically, we'll just kind of roll with this, like deciding the future or making a difference type of theming, just for the sake of where I'm going with this. I'm wondering, like, if this could end up connecting to Advent Children in a sense. Because, like, what if some of the guilt or etc. Cloud ends up carrying with him is that maybe these 7 seconds were kind of wasted on me. Because, I
What do you
mean,
mean?
just kind of look at his mental state. Obviously, he's carrying this guilt about Aerith, about Zack. and they're having to actually start doing things like use oil again, and they're not using materia. But is this really enough? And that's kind of what Dirge Cerberus kind of goes into as well, especially with like all the deep ground people trying to get Omega Weapon up and running. But I think just after everything's said and done, like maybe Cloud kind of had a bit more of a hopeful disposition there at the end. But I mean, just look at how Edges and Geostigma hits. So I think that does kind of just break this man down a bit again in Advent Children. Like this is probably just me grasping at straws here. But I mean, there's already a lot of stuff that's already leading into Advent Children, and possibly how Cloud could kind of have this kind of like depressive relapse. But I think that could be an interesting way to view things after this is said and done. They could possibly do something else with Advent Children, because this whole year of Under the Plate, Noah and I, especially Noah's been like, just make the Advent Children game or DLC.
No, make it. Like we will be having a video on this, and it's gonna be so crazy, I promise you. But like, yeah, make the game.
But, because tell me after all that's said and done, and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna really make a difference, and then just seeing like all these overcast skies, everyone's getting sick. Midgar's destroyed, and Edge isn't exactly a beautiful city to live in.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said about that. And with Advent Children in particular, one thing that I'm really thinking about right now is I really would like to see the developers start to lay the groundwork of Cloud in grieving the loss of Aerith in part 3 to lead into Advent Children, right? Because it's not like he doesn't grieve in the original game. Obviously he does, but I think that there are really potential for a lot of instances of him going through these emotions and trying to cope with them, and kind of using that as the setting point for Advent Children down the line. So, that could be done in numerous ways, but I really would like to see Cloud self-reflect on, this idea that it's his fault that she died. And, because we see that in Advent Children, and I want that expressed in part 3 as much as possible without being like overbearing,
Yeah, because really some of that I think will end up boiling down to how they want to execute the ending. Because I think we've touched on this a bit before, but they could just kind of make it a bit more similar to the original, just fleshed out more. So I'm wondering if we could get some of this before, their, meteor is stopped by Holy, and it smash cuts to 500 years later.
Right.
I guess that's just a weird thing. We can't say with a certainty, but this is like content and writing that we feel should be there. It almost makes me wonder if there could be possibly another like light novel about it or something.
Yeah. The ending of the game is, I feel like for anyone, like the most interesting point of the remake trilogy at this point, just because there's so many different directions it could go in. And, that could be 1-to-1 with the original. That could be, the original ending with added expansion. That could be the original ending with an entire epilogue. There's so many different areas they could go. And that could also be a whole new ending, right? So I'm really curious to see how they do it. I think everything will obviously, as they've said, it will link up to Advent Children. It will tie to Advent Children. It's been said multiple times at this point. But I do think that there will be a more, a more feeling of closure, which it's hard to argue that there is a better feeling of closure than the original ending. But, with the compilation, I do think that they're going to try to find a way to close things out and really kind of give that ultimate feeling to players who have been, fans of this series since 1997.
They could do like a MCU thing and like, okay, here's like multiple like post or mid credits scenes, or possibly even do like some imagery in the credits that could
I was gonna
possibly
say,
wrap some of this up.
Yeah, I was gonna say I wouldn't be surprised. You know how in the credits that we've gotten for both remake and rebirth, we've seen like replays of all the cutscenes. I wouldn't be surprised if they decided to not necessarily make an epilogue, but use that kind of whole, 5 to 7 minutes of. It's probably longer than that, to be honest. Like, let's just say 10 minutes of screen time of credits to kind of show different scenes of the party rebuilding, this happening, this life event, Denzel, all this stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if they did something like that. But again, I'm really excited to see how the team is able to incorporate Advent Children specifically even further into the narrative, specifically for Cloud.
And really, I guess one of the last things to talk about is the quote unquote white materia when it's quite clear from how I see it.
Yeah, it is pretty clear.
So, I guess really, because I feel like that's going to be central to something Cloud does in this game. But do you have any theories on that?
I think that there is so many things that you could point to for what the clear materia is going to be used for and this and that. But I will say, I think anyone, like anyone that is familiar with materia and stuff, I think that it's going to be filled with something, right? It's going to be filled with something. We don't know what. You could argue, people have thrown out that it's going to be filled with the memory of Sephiroth to finish him once and for all. People have argued that it might be filled with the concept of reality to be able to stop the dream worlds, right? There's so many different areas they could go, but I will say that I think undoubtedly it is going to be crucial for the end of the game, and specifically Cloud, right? Because again, I think that there's some imagery at play where that materia is hollow in a way, right? And I think that Cloud definitely resonates with that, and it also ties into the theme song that is about Cloud called Hollow by Yosh and Remake. So
There's a weird part of me that's like, I wonder if they could somehow twist it to be like the thing at like the end of that first Kung Fu Panda movie, where
oh
like
my god.
where the scroll's like, reflects his face back into it. I mean, obviously you can't do that quite because it's not really a mirror, but I feel like there could just be a thing of like, yeah, everyone starts hollow and you got to fill it with what is important to you.
Right.
That could be something, but I feel like it's gonna be such a strong piece of not just theming, but it has to conclude some type of arc for Cloud, is what I feel.
Definitely. And it'll be really interesting to kind of see how the clear materia came to be, because we know, like, when Aerith was showing Red 13, she specifically said that the Whispers stole memories, and that was in the knowledge, and that's what, the clear materia was left as a result. So I'm just really interested to see how it comes into play, because Sephiroth does not want that to be a thing. I mean, he says whenever they enter the Sleeping Forest, like, that doesn't belong here, right? Like, I feel like that's a very, okay, wait, that shouldn't be here moment for Sephiroth. And again, that's a completely new storyline that is going to be crucial for, I think, the new ending of the game. Because, I think that we're going to get the same general ending of defeating Sephiroth, stopping Meteor, but how we get there in the ultimate conclusion might be a little different. And whatever happens is going to be tied to this clear materia.
I'm almost wondering if one of the changes has there been anything stated that, because they don't find out till towards the end of the game that Aerith actually did manage to cast Holy before she died. But
Yeah.
what if she didn't this time, and there could be some way that it's like this materia, we have to figure out how to actually get back what was lost to like let Holy be cast.
Interesting. Yeah, because, to be fair, we did see her materia fall and sink into the water. But that's definitely an interesting thought of, like, if that was a key for unleashing Holy on the planet. Because again, you know, the party sees what actually happened when they go back to the City of the Ancients with Bugenhagen, and we will kind of find out there that, oh, Holy was cast. So it would be an interesting twist to see that, oh, it actually wasn't cast, and we have to, like, make our own or something.
Or once again, some world stuff, and he gets like maybe his final goodbyes with Aerith or something, and she finishes her incantation or whatever.
Yeah. Or Zack jumps into the clear materia, and there's like a little chibi Zack inside of it.
And it's like a Tamagotchi. You got to take care of the Zack. They take some inspiration from Death Stranding.
Embrace your dreams.
You can rock him like a BB, like in Death Stranding.
There you go. Yeah, there you go.
That's how it's gonna end.
Yeah, right. Yeah, giant baby, giant Zack. But I think overall that's a very interesting idea. That again, the clear materia I think is the key to a lot of stuff. And when complemented with the black materia that we obviously know has a very key role to play, it'll be really interesting to see. And maybe with the clear materia that the Gi come in somehow, because obviously they have experience in forging materia, being the black materia. So maybe we'll see the Gi come back.
Maybe there's even a thing where they take it to the Gi.
Yeah.
And maybe try to figure something. There's just a lot of mystery. A lot.
There is.
And we'll be getting some answers, hopefully within the next couple years or so.
I mean, I would hope so.
I'd hope so.
If part 3 doesn't come out in the next couple of years,
that means Meteor. That means Holy wasn't cast and we were taken out by Meteor.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna do. So with that being said, guys, that's gonna do it for episode 35 of Under the Plate. Thank you so much for watching, especially this episode, as it marks our 1-year anniversary of making these episodes. I want to personally thank everyone for every view, like, comment, or share that you've given this series, as it's truly grown beyond our expectations for this first year. Please let us know down below if there's any topics you're really hoping that we're going to tackle soon, and we'll be sure to look into it and potentially put a video out on it. We're extremely thankful for our very supportive fan base at this point, and we're so excited to continue the journey in year 2 of Under the Plate. Regarding today's episode, be sure to let us know down below if you're looking forward to anything in particular with Cloud in Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you on the next episode.